Hey, folks, and welcome back to another episode of Embodied Resilience, All Things Neurodivergence. And today we're going to talk about kind of authenticity versus the shoulds. So, what does that mean? Well, neurodivergent people often grow up absorbing messages about who they should be, how they should work, socialize, rest, communicate, and succeed, and even what success means. So today we're going to explore how those internalized shoulds pull us away from authenticity, contribute to burnout and shame, and how we can begin to kind of redefine a life that actually fits our nervous systems. And what does that mean? So first, what do we mean by should? Well, these are kind of the internalized rules or these are societal rules that we've internalized that we learn from family, friends, school, work, society, right? Often sounding things like, I should be able to handle this. I should be more productive. I should want what everyone else wants. I should be able to remember things, or I should be able to focus, or I shouldn't forget things so often. So kind of the opposite of the shoulds is the shouldn't. Right? It's not always what we should do, but it's also a lot of times what we shouldn't do. Right? And the thing is, these shoulds or these rules are often rooted in kind of neurotypical norms and not neurodivergent realities. And they really become an internal critic rather than a helpful guide. They tell us, you know, they promote shame and guilt rather than autonomy and being helpful and kind of being a guide to allow us to figure out what makes sense for our worlds, right? So why do shoulds hit or often hit neurodivergent folks harder? Well, a lot of neurodivergent traits are often corrected or criticized or pathologized very early in life. I don't have this the the link. I wish I did. But studies have shown that neurodivergent children are criticized 20,000 times more than neurotypical kids by the age of like 10 or 12. 20,000 times. That hits, right? Masking teaches us that authenticity equals risk. When we are our authentic self, we're told we're too loud, too sensitive, too empathetic, too intense, right? Often conflicting things, too quiet, too much, or alternatively, sometimes not enough, right? We kind of live at the extremes, right? We struggle with executive dysfunction. We often have sensory needs. And, as I just said, kind of that big emotional intensity. And so it often clashes with kind of societal expectations of how to kind of navigate life, right? But it's not just navigating life, it's navigating neurotypical life. And what does that look like? Chronic comparison reinforces the belief that we're behind or failing. And this is something that, again, that many people do is compare, right? This is not just a neurodivergent thing. But when you are comparing yourself to a completely different brain structure and you find yourself lacking, it hurts. You think there's something wrong with me, especially if you're late diagnosed and you grew up thinking that you were neurotypical and be like, why am I not matching up? It's like being told, hey, climb that tree, and everybody around you is a monkey and you're a dog. And you're like, I can go up the tree to a degree, but it's way harder. It takes me way longer, and I'm not going to get nearly as high. Right? But I don't realize that I'm a monkey. I think that, you know, that I am, and I'm trying to do it, and they're just like, "Oh, just do this. This is how this works," and it doesn't. Right? So we spend all our time comparing ourselves to others, and you're trying to compare apples to apples when it's actually apples to oranges, right? And so what happens is that creates rejection sensitivity, and so it amplifies the shame when we don't meet expectations, whether it's societal or whether it's, even if nobody else kind of puts it on us, just by growing up in this environment, even if people are trying to be affirming and supportive, we often will internalize that shame or that blame, right? Oh, they're just being nice, especially if we don't realize that we are neurodivergent. And there's a reason why that we are having these struggles. So, how does living by shoulds show up? Well, it's constant self monitoring and second guessing. It's making choices based on expectations or beliefs of what we should do rather than capacity or sometimes even capability. It's pushing through overwhelm until burnout hits, and then you can't, and then being labeled lazy. It's often difficulty knowing what you actually want because you've been told, well, you should want this. And that may not even be what you want. Or maybe it is, but not in that way that you're being told that you should. Right? It's getting in touch with yourself and learning, what is it that I want? Not what I should want, but what do I actually want? Right? It's that feeling disconnected from your identity or your values. Right? And sometimes it's doing life correctly, you know, by what society would consider correctly, but feeling disconnected, unsatisfied, disingenuous, because yeah, sure, you're doing what you're supposed to, but it doesn't feel like you, and you don't understand why, right? So, what is kind of authenticity versus masking? Well, authenticity is living in alignment with your values, your needs, and your nervous system. Masking is the opposite. It is suppressing traits to appear acceptable or functional. And it's not meant as a deceptive practice. We're not doing it to fool people. Hell, most of the time, we don't even realize that we're doing it until we start to try and unmask and be and be authentic. So, masking is often protective, often subconsciously so. Sometimes conscious. Sometimes we make that conscious effort. But even when it is conscious, if you're not diagnosed or you're not realizing that you're neurodivergent, you just know that you're doing it, but you don't know why. You just know that this is something you have to do because when you try and be yourself, you're criticized or ignored or dismissed. So you've learned, well, I have to kind of be what other people expect me to be. And can that be perceived as being deceptive? Yeah. But the goal behind it is not to deceive people in a negative way, in a way to try and get something, but rather in a way to try and protect ourselves from being hurt. Right. Long-term masking, leads to exhaustion, anxiety, depression, and sometimes identity confusion, which is why for so many people that are considered kind of like, low support needs or what prior was called kind of high functioning is, and especially for women, would be like they'd be diagnosed with anxiety, depression because of the effects of masking, not realizing that's what they're doing. And when they actually are diagnosed and are able to kind of start trying to be their authentic self, oftentimes those other symptoms, the anxiety, depression, exhaustion, diminishes or sometimes even goes away. Right. Again, does not mean that you cannot have anxiety, depression, bipolar, BPD, and neurodivergence. It's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is that undiagnosed and untreated neurodivergence, if those other things exist, will amplify them, will make it so much worse. Right. Unmasking doesn't have to mean oversharing or over explaining. It sometimes can, because we're trying to kind of find that boundary, but it means being honest with yourself first. It means knowing who you are, and that's hard work, especially if you didn't realize that's what you were doing, right? So unmasking is really about trying to get in touch with who you are, the real you, not the mask that society thinks that you should show, right? What is the cost of ignoring authenticity? Well, we talked about it a little bit, but we can go a little bit more into it. Uh, it's burnout that doesn't resolve with rest alone. So like, oh hey, I went on a vacation. I feel so much better. I can come back and I'm good to go. Um, because if you're ignoring your authenticity, if you're continuing to mask, then you're continuing to engage in those behaviors um, that are contributing to the burnout. You're putting a band-aid on, you're not addressing the root concerns. It can often stir up resentment towards others and sometimes even towards yourself, right? Frustration that you can't be who you are, fear that if I am myself, I'm going to lose people in my life, right? Often leads to a loss of joy, creativity, spontaneity, connection. We can connect with people from a place of inauthenticity, but you can't develop deep, long-term, lasting connections, ones that are going to weather storms that inevitably come up because you're not actually being honest about who you are. People can sense that, even if they don't know what it is. It's relationships that are built around performance instead of connection. And sure, it can last for a while, but eventually when shit hits the fan, when things get real, performance doesn't last. Right. It often feels like you're living someone else's life, not your own. And again, that can feel protective. There's a reason that we do it. It doesn't come out of nowhere. But the longer you do it, the more you do it, the more we tend to lose our sense of self. That's a really hard place to be. So, how do you move from should to what actually works or to being kind of more authentic? Well, try replacing should with curiosity. What does my nervous system need? If you're not sure, um, you know, if you're experiencing burnout and you're not sure how to get out of it, there's a great workbook by Dr. Neff, and here it is, the Autistic Burnout Workbook. It's fantastic. Dr. Megan Anna Neff. She has lots of resources on her website. You know, evaluate your expectations through a neurodivergent lens and not a moral one or a neurotypical one. Right? What does that mean? It's different for everybody. So if you're not sure, reaching out to a therapist. If you're in Ontario, myself or anyone on my team would love to help you with that because it's hard to change your perspective if you're so stuck in what your beliefs and thoughts have been for so right. Um, Identify your personal kind of like non-negotiables So rest, quiet, structure, flexibility. What do those things look like? Like for me, I talked previously about kind of like um, inconsistent consistency. And so for me, it's like, well, working out is very much something I have to do, but I cannot miss more than 2 days in a row. So I did not work out this morning. I was up very late last night. Uh, Woke up a little bit late this morning. I, had training today. So I wasn't able to do my workout. Am I going to do it tonight? Maybe. I would like to, but I don't know. However, I worked out yesterday, and I'm planning to work out tomorrow. So, what are your personal non-negotiables? Right? For me, when I see clients, that is non-negotiable. I have to see my clients. But if I'm really feeling like it's just a day, and I have the ability to do that, I do what absolutely has to be done, and then other things can wait. I will pick those up later, right? Or can I delegate? Like trying to figure that out for yourself takes time, right? Give yourself permission to do things differently. It could be publicly, it could be privately. I know not everybody has the privilege to be open about their neurodivergence or their suspected neurodivergence for fear of losing connections, friends, family, opportunities at work, for being shamed, belittled. So, where you are able to, safely let the mask down, kind of be your authentic self, whatever that means for you, do it. Work on practicing small, safe moments of authenticity. What does that mean? Well, instead of being like, oh, I have to put things away, it's I'm going to put things in a place that makes sense for me. So for me, I don't keep my ADHD meds in a cabinet in the bathroom because I have to make my daughter's medication in the morning and I need to crush it up. So I keep hers in the kitchen we have open shelves over the sink. I keep them up there and I keep mine with them because when I make hers, it reminds me to take mine, right? Now, oh, you should keep them in the medicine cabinet. If they're in there, I'm not going to see them. I'm going to forget. It's busy. I'm running late. Things like that, right? So trying to kind of like figure out, well, what makes sense for me in the context of kind of my life, right? Um, so, just kind of trying to develop practical kind of reframes and tools. So, this is wrong, it's different, right? Uh, Capacity, not capability, right? Just because I'm capable of something does not mean I always have the capacity to do it. Capacity fluctuates, it changes over time. Sometimes it can change in a big way from when I was in my 20s to now in my 40s. Yeah, my capacity is a lot lower than what it was. I was able to push through a lot more, ignore a lot more things when I was in my early 20s. I had way more energy. I had way less responsibilities. Do I have the capability of doing the things now that I did in my 20s? Yeah, but the impact it's going to have on me is much higher and my recovery time is going to be much longer. So just because I have the capability doesn't mean I always have the capacity. And sometimes even from day to day, I've been working pretty consistently and I have a punching bag that I use and I have to take it up and put it down or put it up and take it down to do my workout because I can't just leave it up. And when I first got it, it was a real struggle to get it up. And now I'm at the point where I can kind of put it up, like, I grab it, bring it, hook it, and I'm usually okay. And earlier this week, I went to do it, and my God, it was a struggle. Um, I think just because I was tired, maybe didn't get enough sleep. I'm not sure. So yeah, do I have the capability of putting the bag up? For sure. Sometimes, the capacities fluctuates on any given day. Normally, I'd be able to just put it up, but on that day, my capacity kind of wasn't where it usually was in terms of that, right? Another thing is kind of looking at like values over appearances, right? What are your personal values? Really trying to figure that out because a lot of us think we know what our values are, but we're actually not sure. And so if you're able to, really kind of get in touch with what your values are, and again, that's something that a therapist can work with you on and help you with, because your values can help to shape or kind of to reawaken your authenticity, right? As I was talking about before, kind of like energy management over productivity. So, being aware of where your energy is and what makes sense. Making kind of more sustainable choices over maybe more flashy ones. Learning to say no to things, trying to give yourself permission to miss out on things. We can't do all the things regardless of what our brains are telling us, right? Um, Therapy, or kind of talking to people, or friends or family, or journaling, or mindfulness, right? These are all things that can help you kind of reframe your perspective and learn kind of different tools. So, to kind of wrap up all this up is, I want to leave you with some thoughts. One, you don't need to become someone else to be worthy. You are worthy as you are. If somebody doesn't like you for who you are, then that means that they're not your person. And yeah, sometimes that hurts, and sometimes we lose people, and that sucks. But I would rather be my authentic self and find people that are going to like me for me, and not because I've changed who I am for them. And that has been a very, very hard thing to come to terms with, because I am a huge people pleaser. I'm very much a recovering people pleaser. And it's something I still kind of try and push back against. Um, and I have lost friends because of that. But I've also gained friends, and friends that know me and are okay with me and don't shame me for who I am. Right? Authenticity is not a destination, it's an ongoing practice. There's no, set it, forget it, right? This is it's an ongoing practice, because we're always changing, we're always evolving, as are the people around us, right? A life that fits your brain may look unconventional to other people, and that's okay. It's not their life, it's yours. Letting go of shoulds isn't giving up. It's choosing yourself. It's choosing sustainability. It's choosing authenticity. It's choosing to be who you are and not who you think people want you to be. So if you are struggling with authenticity and how to kind of be who you want to be, then I encourage you to reach out. We're able to work with people across Ontario, or if you're here in London, you can definitely come into the office and speak to us in person. Or if not us, someone, but I highly encourage you to, work on trying to move away from should and to more to who you authentically are. So, thank you much for watching, and I will see you next week. Thank you much.